So, welcome back to the second part of tonight's Toastbuff Talk. And before I introduce Kerry, I just want to point out that Jack Wright, the one who is eating everything he can see, just got back from Italy doing the two volcano sprint, but he rode there on his bike from here, and then he was sprinting back through Europe, maybe with occasional trains to make it for the talk. And so, if you have any food, just give him some food. So our next guest is Kerry Macphee, and probably she doesn't need much introduction, but I will tell you what I've learned, and maybe she will learn something about herself as well. So Kerry comes from South US in the Outer Hebrides, and her first language is Gaelic. Even though she was always a sporty kid, she didn't start cycling more seriously until a friend encouraged her to sign up for her first triathlon when she was at Stirling University. After a handful of triathlons, she realized she actually hated swimming, but loved cycling. That's good. And what's more, she was pretty good at it. Since then, Kerry competed for Team Scotland in the Commonwealth Games. She regularly races in mountain bike events around the world. She holds the fastest known times for women on the West Highland Way and the Badger Divide. 2024 has been a great year racing-wise for Kerry. She finished the Land Between race as the first woman and fourth overall. She also smashed out the fantastic results in the Highland Trail 550, which she will be talking about tonight. So hands up if you've heard about the Highland Trail 550. Well, my husband had heard about it since Sunday as well. Okay, have you done the Highland Trail 550? Oh, kind of. And are you here to learn everything how to win the Highland Trail 550? Very good. So the Highland Trail 550 comprises 550 miles around, you guessed it, the Scottish Highlands. It's a self-supported mountain bike route with over 16,000 meters of climbing. It starts and finishes in Tyndrum in the Southern Highlands, looping way up via the ascent in the northwest corner of Scotland. The majority of the route is on trails and quiet roads, but it includes some boggy and very technical sections, which the route creators admit or perhaps gloat may be beyond anyone's capabilities. The route can be ridden at any time as an individual time trial, but each spring, as the ice melts and the snow hares shed their winter coats, the route creators organize a group start, limited to only 30 lucky lads and 30 lucky lasses. This year was Kerry's first crack at the Highland Trail. She finished in just under 4 days as the first female and sixth overall, and nearly 24 hours ahead of the next ladies. I think she deserves an applause, yeah? And I should also point out that Kerry's story is a true underdog story. Although Kerry races against professional riders, she is not a professional cyclist. In a sense, she's not paid to race. She does have several jobs because she tells me racing is expensive. She works for a renewable energy company. She's a cycling development officer. She's a Gaelic media freelancer for BBC. She does coaching and guiding, and more recently, she's been involved with Adaptive Riders Collective, Dirt Divas, and Bike Trossachs. These are projects that promote inclusivity and safe spaces for all riders. So now, let's hear from Kerry.
That was a really nice introduction. Thanks, Isa. And also, I'm not really sure how I meant to talk Neil, because that was such a good talk as well. I really enjoyed it. It was so enjoyable. And a lot of what Neil talked about actually resonated with me. So I think you'll probably, like some of the themes that you picked on will probably pop up. So I wasn't really sure what to talk to you about today, but the last time I did a talk, it was at the Limitless Women's Mountain Bike Festival, and I was out riding or leading one of the rides the day after the talk that I did, and one of the women who was running the festival said to me, the reason that we really wanted you to talk at the festival with us, Kerry, was because when I look at you, the phrase or the term that pops into my head is proximity role model. And I thought, I've never heard that before. And she said, well, I see you as a proximity role model because although some of the stuff that you do, I would never be able to do, something about you and the way you do it is a little bit relatable. So it kind of makes me think I might be able to do it. And I thought, that's brilliant. And that's, like Neil was saying, he wants his stuff to be relatable to people because it does. Like, I look at the TCR and stuff, I'm like, how the hell do you get to that point? Like, how do you do that? But then I know other people will look at the Highland Trail and be like, how the hell do you get to that point? But somehow there are steps and there's a way. And I think when I was thinking about this, I was like, well, tell a bit of your story so that people can find the relatable parts of you and then see how you got to where you got. So I'll talk about my upbringing. I feel like my racing, I don't race XC anymore, so I feel like that's in the past now. I'm an ultra cyclist now, don't you know? And I'll talk about things that I'm quite passionate about, like the Hebrides and my Gaelic upbringing and a lot of like the inclusion and opportunity stuff that I do. So, start off. I always assume that people know where South Uist is. Why would you not if you don't? But it always surprises me how many people don't. So, yeah, Scotland, big old country. South Uist, right on the left side over there. And I've just got back from South Uist, actually. I went over for 5 days, but ended up staying for 9, I think, because the ferries were cancelled, the weather was really bad. Calmac had redeployed because Islay is more important than South Uist. But it was flipping good. I hadn't been home since New Year, and I forgot how much I need it's so windy at home. It's so windy, and it set me up for winter riding because, it's not windy here. It's just not the same at all. So that's been wonderful. If you haven't been, it's a beautiful place and the Hebrides are amazing and it's great for riding and there's just so much to see. So how does somebody from South Uist, which is tiny, it's maybe 3 miles at the widest part and 20 miles long maybe, and it's really flat. It sits on a tectonic plate. So the west coast of the islands is all beaches and the east coast is all kind of rocky and lunar and more hilly. You notice that if you zoomed in on a Google map, you just see yellow, and that's the whole of the chain of islands. And in South Uist, the main road runs down the spine, so it is so flat. But as I was saying to Isa earlier, when you pedal in flat places, your legs never stop going. So even if you think, I never ride hills, you will be so strong because you're non-stop pedaling. But I wasn't a rider when I grew up in South Uist. But, oh yeah, how does somebody from a flat island become an athlete? Well, I've got 4 suspicions as to how that happened. The first is that I come from a good, big island family of 5. I've got 1 of 5, which means that everything was always a competition and everyone was always fighting to be the first. Whether it was to sit in the middle in the car, that was a race, or whether it was who got their school uniform off first so they could run over the fence to my granny's, everything was a race. The second thing that I think part of my upbringing lent itself to being an athlete was this thing I would say is the thing that probably gave me a good set of lungs. I played the bagpipes. And I loved playing the bagpipes when I was younger. I used to compete, I was really into it, and I stick to the electric chanter now, but I certainly would pick up the pipes if I had the time. And the third reason why my upbringing, I think, led me to become an athlete, absolutely, this is a big hot take, by the way, there's no science in this at all. The third reason is that growing up on an island meant that I also grew up on a croft. And my dad, 5 children, we kept sheep, we had cows, we had pigs at some point, loads of chickens. Dad would get us out of our beds so early to go down to the croft in Askernish to round up the sheep, to move them to the receding or onto the hill. And we'd be like, Dad, why can't you get a dog? And Dad would be like, I've got 5 good children with 10 legs between the lot of you. I do not need a dog. And I remember running on the side of the hill. You know, in the islands and fishermen, they always wear big yellow wellies. it'd be like, stick the wellies on, we're going. So yeah, that was a big feature of my upbringing as well when I was younger. And the final piece of the how does someone who grew up on a flat island become an athlete is that as well as having a big family, I'm also a twin. So, and if I wasn't competing with my other 3 siblings, it was certainly with my twin Jennifer. Jennifer's football daft. She's not really into cycling and stuff at all, really. My wee sister Kirsty, she's done a lot of cycling. Her and I have competed at the Island Games, special games for all the islanders around the world. It's taken me to places like Bermuda. It's in Orkney next year. So, yeah. So a little bit of racing or riding background. I was really competitive when I was younger. I was obsessed with gladiators. That's what I wanted to do. I used to love watching the Olympics. But mum and dad were like, nope, you're not being an athlete, like you've got to go to university and do what's what. And I used to compete and race cross country and did well and went away and raced from the mainland, but they were like, nope, not having it, you have to go to university. And nobody from the Western Isles had ever done anything like go to the Commonwealth Games. So it was kind of like, yeah, mum and dad are right. Like I didn't have a role model that I could think, yeah, that is, an athlete is a thing that you could do. And I know why they did that. Like they just want to make sure that their children are okay and that you're not pissing money into the wind. And lo and behold, here I am, like racing bikes and not being very responsible. But anyway, so I went to Stirling Uni. I did my undergrad in PE teaching there and quickly realised that teaching wasn't for me. So when I finished my degree, I stayed on to do a master's and I worked for the uni at the same time. Triathlon Scotland office was next to ours and my friend convinced me that we should do a triathlon. I didn't even know what it was. And we went to Recycle Bike in Stirling and we bought a bike and mine was like 30 quid and it was way too big for me. It had down tube shifters, it had like paint splattered all over it. And I lived in a part of Stirling called Cambusbarron and I would pedal to Stirling Uni and that was my training, and then my long ride was pedalling to Stirling Uni via Bridge of Allen, which is like 7 miles or something. Like that's where it started really. And as Isa said, even though I grew up on an island, I was shite at swimming, like really awful, because we just didn't really swim. And my dad was a scallop diver as well. But it turned out, Dad used to take us swimming at Dalba swimming pool, and they made him do his lifeguard thing, and he flipping failed. So that's why I'm not a swimmer, because we weren't allowed to go swimming anymore, because even Dad, who was a deep sea diver, couldn't swim. So yeah, but I was so I entered a novice triathlon. It was Bishop Briggs, but I didn't know that novice is like proper novice, like you've just started riding a bike. And of course I won because there was hardly anyone in it. But I didn't know, and I just got that taste for success again. I was like, oh my god, that was amazing! Like I totally want to be an athlete once again. And just started training, and I loved that. Like I loved riding my bike, I loved running. I always did a lot of cross country, and I made myself swim. But I have another theory, another hot take, that I was so bad at swimming that I just had to pedal like the bloody clappers to catch up, and that's also what made me into a cyclist. But the triathlon thing, it all happened really quickly. Like within a year, I actually became British off-road triathlon champion, and I've won multiple Scottish triathlon champs and stuff. And it was a total whirlwind, to the point where I actually raced for GB at the European Champs in The Hague and finished 4th. But again, I was so awful at swimming that I was that person with a canoe quite close to me. Like this girl might float back to the UK, so we're just going to hover and make sure that she's okay. And I pretty much just caught all but the 3 girls in front of me on the bike and the run. A little bit like Neil though, I also wore ankle socks when I started out riding my bike on my 26-inch bike, which I bought on a cycle to work scheme for £1,000 or something, which was, I was like, oh my god, that's so much money for a bike at the time. And yeah, that's just kind of how it's that's just how it started, just doing stuff, and it sort of snowballed. But the transition to mountain bike happened because I was doing off-road triathlon and there was a Scottish mountain bike race on, and I was like, oh, stuff, I'm going to give this a whirl. And I remember I had like I know this now and looking back, but I had knobby neck tyres on the bike, which are not cross-country tyres. And I think I had like one gel, and my sister came to help me. And it was the year before the Commonwealth Games, and the gun went at the start of the race, and everyone shot off the line like the absolute clappers. And I was like, holy crap. In my head, I was like, was this not meant to be an hour and a half long? And everyone's like just going like bananas on the start. And I was like, crap, I better like catch them. But bit by bit, I caught all but one girl. And it turned out, oh, I don't know if I should say this. I'll tell you. So Lee Craigie won, who went to the Commonwealth Games. But the girl that came third had just had an article in the Herald, a 2-page spread, and she had 2 wheels. Katie Winton, Commonwealth Games hopeful. That was her last ever XC race. And that's when she transitioned to enduro. And that's when I started XC racing. We've never talked about it. But yeah, I guess you could say I was responsible for her enduro career, because I just was that person who came out of nowhere and everyone was like, who the heck's this? And on Monday, the triathlon coach was like, hello, Scottish Cycling, I've got someone I'd like you to have a look at, please. Kerry, just get out of the pool, like your time with triathlon's done. And he put Scottish Cycling onto me, but even that year, or when that happened, I remember the Scottish Cycling coach being like, yeah, you're not bad, but I'm going to put you on the development programme. You're not quite like performance level, which is totally fine. But that winter, I went away and I wasn't swimming, I wasn't running, I was just riding my bike. And I don't even know how this happened. It must have been all that running around on the croft when I was younger. Like, all that training was there, just waiting to explode out of me. But the first race back that season, I made the Commonwealth Games qualifying standard. I'd just become a new rider. I won't go into the science of it. Like, I've got loads of geeky things about how I did that accidentally, like just learning from loads of mistakes. But I don't have time tonight. But anyway, another conversation for another time. But yeah, but all of a sudden, I was a performance rider. Like, I was put on the performance programme, and who knows how, but I flipping qualified for the Commonwealth Games, first woman from the Outer Hebrides to ever go, which I'm extremely proud about. And I still can't believe that I freaking did that. Like, honestly, it's insane. It was 10 years ago as well. Like, madness. So, yeah, anyway. Since then, yeah, bikes have brought me so much. Like, the stuff that I've managed to do, I've like travelled to so many cool places, raced World Cups, and like these are just 3 of the fun highlights of many different highlights. Like, sometimes quite often when I was racing, so I worked 2 or 3 jobs, I wasn't on a team or anything, and oftentimes to be a professional rider in something like XC, which requires a lot of travel to get a lot of points, to increase your like World Cup start, like it's tough going, and like you probably have to have like the backing of your parents or something. And I didn't have that, but I didn't care. I was like, I'm not letting something like that stop me, and I'm not letting the fact that I'm not like on a team or whatever. Like, I was just like, no, I'm just going to make it work. So I'd look at the calendar and like pick a race, and I'd just go on my own. I'm not going to go down. I went to flipping the shambles that I found myself in doing that stuff. Is just unreal. Like Turkey, I got on the last. Bloody dog stories. on the last day of a stage race, they were called Kengal Turkish guard dogs, like massive. You know when dogs are so big and scary that they don't even bark, they're like, it's like a really low, wow, kind of noise. It's horrible. It's terrifying. I could see like 4 of them approach me. And I was like, oh crap, what do I do? And I was descending, I was in 3rd place on the last day of the stage, didn't know what the heck to do. And I was like, well, I can't go back up the hill because they're obviously going to catch me. So I was like, I'll just pedal straight through them. And one of them bit me on the bloody leg. And I obviously had like a massive like adrenaline rush because I caught 1st and 2nd place trying to get rid of these fucking dogs. Caught 1st and 2nd place because I was so bloody terrified, and then totally blew my doors. So I maintained 3rd place, crossed the finish line maybe half an hour later, and I had blood pouring out of my leg, and they were like, what happened? I was like, I got attacked by dogs. And they threw me in an ambulance and took me to the hospital. Got to the hospital, and they were like, oh, have you got your passport? Where are you staying? Like, have you got someone you can phone? And I was like, I've got 4 empty gel wrappers and a scabby helmet. That's it. But fortunately, one of the other girls had also got bitten, and the race and I had taken the ambulance, so the race organizer had to take her. And I think she was Belarusian. She didn't speak any English, and yeah, he was able to sort us out and had to, go through the rigmarole of getting all the injections and stuff. So, like, scary at the time, but also just beautiful stories to kind of look back on. And even though I was on my own, like, sometimes you think if you don't have someone to share it with, like, where does that memory go? But it doesn't. You just get to tell a room full of people like these beautiful things. So yeah, so Turkey became a highlight. But I've never been back since. Racing in Lanzarote was always really interesting to me because it was something I did every year, almost every year, because it took place in January, and it was a perfect time, a 4-day stage race in January, nice weather. Would totally recommend it just for a wee training hit and just getting away. And then another cool highlight was bikepacking a stage of the Tour de France with one of my friends, actually, flying into Geneva, dumping bike boxes, and then pedalled the 6 calls to Morzine from Annemasse, I think it started, actually. That was last year. And that, again, that was really cool, like all these cool things that you do just because you started riding bikes. And I didn't even know that we were going over 6 calls or whatever. Like, I was so disorganised for that, and I'm riding along and I'm like, how far have we got to go, Stu? And Stu's like, oh, this is like the hardest stage of last year's Tour de France, by the way. But when you're in it, you just do it. You just crack on, and yeah, just beautiful what bikes have brought me. But yeah, so the racing happened up until COVID hit. And when COVID hit, a rule came out that if you weren't on a trade team, you weren't allowed to travel. And that was it. Not really that fair, but life's not fair sometimes. So whilst my peers got to race, I didn't. That was it. But actually, that opened a huge door to me in that I used to train quite a lot on my own when I was training for XC, really seriously. And I started spending more time with other people and more time in communities. And I also started doing stuff that I really love, which is just pedaling around Scotland, because I didn't have the pressure of needing to be fresh for a race or needing to do my intervals or needing to eat a certain way or whatever. I was just riding my bike because I loved riding my bike. And it was brilliant. And it was a really valuable reminder that there's more to riding bikes than just racing. And the racing was a really important part of it. And I know a lot of people who graduate from racing their bikes can be a bit, they can sort of look down at people who do race their bikes, and no, just you do you. If you like racing, do it. If you like just plodding along, do it. If you like going fast, do it. don't. And I sometimes experience what me and my friends have coined fast shaming. But it's not nice. Just who cares if you want to go fast? There's nothing wrong with that. But maybe I'm saying that because I did get to do a lot of the going fast, so I'm more kind of comfortable with it. But one of the things that did happen post-COVID, actually, 2.5 years ago, was I had quite a serious accident on my bike. I was coming down Duke's Pass. I've got no memory of what happened other than waking up with 4 firemen and a fire engine behind me, one of them propping them up, and my arm feeling really wobbly. And I'd been going in and out of consciousness for 45 minutes. They'd been coming down the hill and found me. And the bone in my arm actually fell out. It broke through the skin, and it fell out when they undid the bandage onto the ground, and I broke my jaw, and it was awful. I was in hospital for 4 days. And you can't do very much when you've cracked your arm so badly that a chunk of bone came out. And they did manage to, I've got a couple of plates in, but it took a really, really long time to heal. And it's still not healed, and it still causes me problems and numbness. But I'll show you. Sorry. It was really, really, really gruesome. But again, it sort of changed things for me because, like, XC is quite aggressive, and I'd always thought that I'd go back to XC after COVID and stuff. But nah, no, I was good. Like, I was kind of good with it. I was sort of at peace with it and sort of really enjoying how amazing Scotland is. It's so freaking cool. And since COVID and since, like, the arm thing, I've done other cool stuff, and I've also done like fast stuff, but hasn't felt like I've been going fast because I've been enjoying so much of how I've been moving through it. So like just cool things to just skip over very quickly. West Highland Way 2021 with my buddy Stu. He phoned me on the Wednesday and he said, lockdown's lifting on the Friday, shall we go and ride the West Highland Way? And we ended up doing it in a really fast time, but only because we were so frickin' fit because we were just riding our bikes and it was COVID, so it was amazing. Badger Divide, Stu has a big part, my friend Stu has a big part in my story because he's seen me at my best and he's seen me at my worst when I'm riding, so whenever he says something I know to pay attention. And I was supposed to be going to do 10 under the Ben. And we went on a bike ride round Kerry, which is a fantastic 130-kilometre gravel ride. And Stu just went, you're going well, you should try and do a Badger FKT next weekend. And like when he says something, I'm like, oh, right, okay. Yeah, do you know what? The weather looks quite nice. I think I'll give it a wee crack, actually. And I quite like that approach of not putting too much pressure on myself and like having that short lead time. And maybe I'm trying to protect my ego, because if it goes wrong I can say, oh, I only decided last week, so it doesn't matter. But lo and behold, it went quite well. It was like 19 and a half hours or something. I don't know how I did it, but I do remember that I was so bloody happy to be on my bike, and I'm so acutely aware of my privilege. And I remember that day just being like, this is the coolest thing ever, like pedalling from Inverness to Glasgow. Like, what a gift. And I know that sounds really corny, but see, when you ride like that and you really check what you're doing, it's just, yeah, it brings the goods. It makes you like weirdly fast. It's great. So, on to the big E. Woo. So I'd started to do loads of longer things, and I'd always seen the Highland Trail 550. It was such like a mystical thing to me, a thing that other people did. And I remember when it first came on my radar thinking, like, how do you navigate around Scotland? How do you see? Where do you sleep? Like, it was just mad to me. But it was also one of those things that I was like, oh, I'd love to do something like that one day. And as the Highland Trail grew in prominence, and as the 50-50 split between male and females, which is a big part of what the organiser Alan pushes, became a thing, more people would start to say to me, you should do the Highland Trail, you should do the Highland Trail, it's got your name written all over it, Kerry, you should do it. And last year, for one reason or another, I would have loved to have done it, but it didn't work out. But this year I was like, I'm going to make this happen, this is going to be the year. And I freaking did it. And it was bloody incredible. I have really, really struggled to distill and formulate my words and thinking on it, because I still can't make sense of how it happened. And a big part of me feels like I tried to sabotage myself a lot in the lead up to it as well, so that again I'd be off the hook if it went wrong. You know, I was really busy with work and had all this stuff going on and rah, 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 rah. But despite all that, I knew I could do it. My intention wasn't to do it fast or to win, because there were so many things I didn't know, like big back-to-back days, like the sleeping, everything. But like Neil said, I knew I want to do well, so I need to figure out these things. And it's going out with your bivvy and sleeping overnight. It doesn't have to be like a big giant adventure. It's like testing these things out. It's making all the little mistakes. It's one of the big things that I did actually was in April booked 4 days off work and headed up north to recce the top 2 loops. And I had the worst weather ever. I was going over Torridon, and there'd been snow already falling, and it had turned to hail, and the wind was so strong. And everything between, where did I come from? There's two like little shops in Torridon, or on the way to Torridon, a cafe, and everything that I was wearing was absolutely soaked through, and it was really cold and I was running out of food, but they were both closed. I thought, I've got no choice but to keep going here, because there was just nothing. So I was like, stuff it, like I'll just get over Torridon, over to Achnashilach. And it was the hail was so bad, the wind was so bad, and I had that moment of, if something goes wrong right now, I'm in a lot of trouble. So I've got no phone signal, but I did have my tracker with me. So I thought, there's a big red button on that tracker. This might be where I find out what that big red button does. And it might be quite handy to know if it works as well. But when I got to the other side, like I did it, like just slow down, just bit by bit, just get yourself off this hill. Don't rush, because you don't want to have an accident. And I got off the side of the hill, and it was still so windy and wet. And I started pedalling, and I was like, oh, great, Strathcarron's over there. I'm going to see if there's any hotels, because there's no way I'm sleeping in my bivvy in this. And I dived behind a bush, and it probably took me about 10 minutes for the feeling to come back into my fingers. And I looked on booking.com and looked at Strathcarron, and I was like, oh my God, there's nothing in Strathcarron. So I was like, okay, right, I've got a block headwind, but I can get to Caerloughlach in 2 hours, and that will be like 9:30. So just get your head down and just pedal to Caerloughlach. Like, don't skip the path over to Dorney. Like, we don't care about that right now. We just need warmth. And I started pedaling, and the flippin' Strathcarron Hotel emerged like a mirage in front of me at the side of the road. I was like, what is this? And I went in, and I was like trying to make myself, I didn't have to try very hard, but I was trying to make myself look really pathetic. Excuse me. Do you have any spare rooms? And she said, yeah, we do actually. And I started crying because I was so relieved. And it's so mad how much you pent up your emotions in those moments. And as soon as she said yes, I was like, oh my God, I've never been happier. So the kitchen's closing in like 2 minutes. I was like, it's fine, I'll have soup, tea, and fish and chips, and I'll be back in 5 minutes. And they had this big heater, and oh, it was just brilliant. So anyway, the moral of that story is do hard things and get yourself, not stupid hard things, but just out of your comfort zone hard things, because it really does shift your perspective and change your interaction with what you can do. You do come back a little bit lighter or something. It's hard to describe. I think I'm going off on a tangent here, but yeah. So why did I want to do the Highland Trail? Because, I ended up in a situation where, in my private life, where somebody was very determined that bikes weren't something that are going to happen, and I got myself out of that. And it was a bit of a, fuck you. Yeah, excuse my language. No, you do not try and stop people from doing something that brings them so much joy and actually probably makes them a very well-rounded, better person. And that goes for parents and partners. Giving people the space to do the things that they love, I think allows them to have the energy, give them the energy to put into the other things that are important to them as well. And, I wanted to do it. I wanted to do it. And I don't do these things at the expense of other things, but there's certain things that you're drawn to doing, and this for me was one of them. The prep-wise, I think that's a whole different talk in itself, but to break it down a little bit, because of the issues that I'd had with my arm, one of the really simple things that I did in preparation for the Highland Trail was honestly just get in the gym and hang from a bar. And just hang. It's horrible. Hanging until your fingers slip through. And I had very numb fingers, and that really helped strengthen the fingers to prep me for the Highland Trail. And coming out of the Highland Trail, I had what Neil talked about as well, which people call cycling palsy, when you just lose the feeling in your fingers. And it's a really horrible feeling, but I was quite used to it, actually. It was familiar to me. And I think for these big things, people think that to get strong and to prep for them, what you have to do is ride your bike loads. It's actually not. What you have to do is you have to go and sleep in your bivvy. You have to get used to eating foods that you might not normally eat. You have to get strong, probably in the gym if you can. You have to build a robust body. And you need to be able to lift your bike and carry your bike and trudge through things. It's not ride. It's a more holistic thing, and I think people oftentimes miss that actually when it comes to ultra and cycling. It's like being a rounded athlete, and it's reducing fatigue. And for me, a big thing when it comes to these types of events actually is reducing my mental load, which is why I went to recce a lot of the routes, so that when I went to do it, I knew what to expect, and I didn't have to kind of be thinking a lot, or as much, so to speak. And before it, the things I was terrified of are probably the things that most people are terrified of. I hate being cold. Hate being cold, which is why this is my 3 luxury items. One of them was this like super duper lightweight sleeping bag, but it's 0 degree, and it's got this really nice reflective thing inside it. And one of the things I learned pre-ultra was for a sleeping bag to work as well as it should, you should get into it as soon as you've got off your bike, because it'll radiate your heat back at you. And I had never appreciated that, and that's why you should practice with your kit as well. And if your sleeping bag's feeling not very warm for its degree, A, put it in the tumble dryer, or B, get in it faster, and that'll help. I was petrified of mechanicals. I can fix stuff, but what if I had a catastrophic one? I was really scared about that. And then I had this massive fear that I was going to get found out. Like, look at her playing at ultra. Who does she think she is? Oh, horrible. And I think a lot of people probably get that imposter syndrome feeling, but yeah. And did I have a finish goal? Well, other than finishing, no, but I still wanted to do really well. But what does that even mean? Really well to me, or really well compared to other people? I don't know. I didn't know, but I just knew that I wanted to go and do it. So, it's so cool to be in that picture, because I'd seen it every year, and it's the infamous start picture in Tyndrum. I'm going to share with you people like the things that went wrong. And I remember during the Highland Trail, or afterwards when I was reading like the Dotwater race report thing, which is quite fun actually, like reading about yourself from other people's angle. And much like Neil said, at one point someone had written, "Oh, Kerry Macphee is sleeping eerily close to where Lee Craigie slept when she set her FKT." I was like, I've got no freaking clue where Lee slept when she did it. Like, what? Like, no clue. And I didn't even see anyone, or like, it is really funny. But one of the things that they'd also said was like the unflappable Kerry Macphee. And I was thinking, are they saying that because they know loads of things go wrong in ultras, or are they saying that because they think nothing's gone wrong? Oh, and the third thing that was actually written, and this is quite beautiful actually, so I'm on a group chat called Dirt Divas, and one of the girls had sent a screenshot, and it was, Kerry Macphee is showing us why she's a professional cyclist, or why she rides bikes for a living. and one of the girls had messaged us saying, "This isn't true, we need to fix this." And I didn't see a lot on my phone, but I did see that, and I think I pressed like the voice note on my WhatsApp because my phone was in front of me, and I was like, "Message them now, that's wrong." And I don't know why it annoyed me so much. It's such a trope, I think. To do well at something like that, you must be a professional athlete or a full-time athlete, and it really irritated me. But 2 of my friends, I found this out afterwards, they both emailed Dot Watchers, and they both emailed whoever, and they were like, "Actually, I think you're fine, Kerry does this and Kerry does that. Like, can you change that? Because Kerry would prefer for it to be a realistic representation of who she is and what she does out with." So that was cool. I'm totally segueing again, aren't I? Anyway, so we'll go back to the things that went wrong. I thought it was game over 5 hours in, actually, when I got to, not 5 hours in, Fort Augustus. 9 hours? 8 hours? 9? Can't remember. It was all one big blur. The charging cable that I'd tested and retested, an Anchor one, wouldn't flip and work. I couldn't believe it. I don't know what was going on. But I was like, it's fine, I'm at a petrol station. I went into the petrol station and there was no... I managed to get an iPhone one, but they didn't have any like Garmin ones. And I was like, oh, crumbs, I'm in trouble. Like, if I can't ride my Garmin, that's it, it's game over. And I didn't know what to do. And then at the fish and chip place, I was like, can I try my plug, please, and see if my cable will work? And it just wouldn't. And then I was like, oh, I can't borrow a cable because that's against the rules. And then I went back in and I found, like right at the bottom, this giant 2-meter cable. So my cable setup, which I was like, look at me, Miss Ultra, all tidy and neat and organised, went from that tiny little bundle on the right to that massive bundle on the left. I was like, I was like a flippant octopus travelling through the Highlands, like just cables spilling out all over the place. The second thing that happened, so Neil was taking pictures at the Highland Trail 550 and he was like the logistics man for one of the guys that was filming. And I ran into Neil for the first time on the way. No, actually, when I got to Tyndrum, I was so nervous. And I'd said to Jürgen, who Neil was working with, I'll meet you at the start. And I saw this guy like waving around this big massive boom. And I was like, oh, that's the film guy, Jürgen. And I walked up to him. I was like, oh, hi, Jürgen. Hi, you must be Jürgen. And Neil went, no, it's Neil. Because I just was in such a flap that I couldn't, like I saw Neil, but no, I saw the boom actually. And then thought, yeah. So that's when I first saw Neil. And then the second time, sorted the cable stuff and I was pedalling up the north part and I realised I didn't have my oil on me and my chain was making an absolute racket. And that was going into the end of day 2. And I was pedalling along to Drumbeg Stores, and when you do the Northern Loop, you pop out onto a stretch of road, which is the North Coast 500. And I remember when I did the recce thinking this is the worst part of the Highland Trail because it's such a lumpy road and it feels like you go really slow. But it was a beautiful night, amazing sun, it was quite still. And then who pulls up next to me but Neil and Jürgen, like, hi, how are you getting on, how are you getting on? In my head I was thinking, I really want to buy a bottle of olive oil at Drumbeg Stores because I've forgotten my own oil. I hope they're not there to see me be an absolute amateur hour. Anyway, I saw them a couple more times and then lo and behold, who's waiting for me at bloody Drumbeg Stores? But Neil and Jürgen. And like looking back now, it was a funny situation, but because it was my first ultra and because even then I was like, I'm quite far ahead at this point of the next girl and maybe like they're going to think, oh, this is hard, like falling apart, like she's gone way too hard, what's she doing? And I remember buying the olive, I've just forgotten my oil, I'm just going to put this on my chain, and I just couldn't, I was just spilling it all over the place, the bike wouldn't stay up, I was just absolute amateur hour. Anyway, so the third time I saw Neil and Jürgen was on the Leadmore Traverse the next morning. So that night I'd pedalled onto the Leadmore Traverse, pedalled until I got tired, found a spot, went to sleep, apparently really close to Lee Craigie's spot. And I started the rest of the Leadmore Traverse in the morning and my cleat went loose. And I was like, no worries, Miss Not Amateur Hour has got spare cleats in her kit bag. But could I find my Allen key? No, I could not. So the Allen key was in the back of the van because I'd put it there when I was fettling with things just before the race. But it meant that I couldn't tighten my cleat. So I took the cleat out and I pedalled quite a few hours with just one cleat and one without. And who was waiting on the Leadmore Traverse when I was looking like really wonky and weird was Neil and Jürgen. And I was like, oh God, amateur hour here is going to get busted again. So I was like, just play it cool, like pretend like your feet are fine. And every time I saw them, I was like trying to pedal like I was totally clipped in. You didn't know this until the other day. So anyway, I am quite cool, it seems, because I got away with it, they didn't know. But it did end up causing like really quite bad tendinitis in my ankle actually, because it's really hard to pedal without a cleat in. Like it's really uncomfortable by the time you go from the Leadmore Traverse to Ullapool. But I got to Ullapool, found a hardware store and bought what I think is probably the biggest Allen key I've ever seen. So that was the Allen key I wanted to take. That's the one I bought. So I was just like gathering weight as I went. It was great. And the third thing, and this is something that I should have got right when I was practicing actually, but the light bracket came totally loose and I lost the screw and I actually ended up like lashing the light down with restrap straps. And that was coming down the Nolly path? In between, I can't remember, down to Loch Marie. I remember it was down to Loch Marie because I was singing Pete and Diesel on the way. I can't remember, but yeah, again, like that was a bit of like an amateur thing, just losing your light, and I did that whole trail with the light in my hand, which I do not recommend, until I remembered that I'd brought the spare straps with me, so I redeemed myself again. And the other part of the Highland Trail that was really, really tough going for me actually was going through Fisher Fields, which is absolutely beautiful, but the weather turned as I was climbing out of Fisher Fields, and it was so, so wet. And by the time I'd been putting my jacket on, taking it off, putting it on, taking it off all day, like the weather was sort of threatening and spitting all day. But I was like, oh, it's just playing with me again. So I didn't put anything on, and I was soaked by the time it was like, oh, it's time to put your jacket on now. And I was scared as well, actually, because the weather was so bad, and I went over my ankle, and I was really cold, and I thought, if this is going to carry on, I'm not going to be able to carry on. But I got down to Pool U, and there was a campsite there, which I hadn't appreciated. And I went into the campsite and was saved by the hand dryer. Oh, my word. And it's mad how, like, someone asked a question about how you keep going earlier on, and I was thinking, like, nothing lasts forever. Like, you just have to move through it, and even weather doesn't last forever, and you just have to move through it, and that's what I was telling myself in that moment. But putting on soggy but warm clothing just made such a difference, and I was able to crack on singing Pete and Diesel all the way along to Torridon. It was great. The final thing that kind of fell apart for me a little bit on the Highland Trail, actually, I don't really know if I want to put this picture up because it's a bit rank, it's like swollen feet. When I was climbing into Glen Affric, I'd not long run into the guy that finished in front of me. His name was Andrew Hutchison. And Andrew caught me. I'd passed him in the night, and I didn't really know where I was. I was kind of looking at the tracker, because it's quite fun to do. And I'd passed a couple of the guys in the night, I think, and he was like, you're in a pretty good time, Kerry. And I was like, am I? What kind of time? And he was like, well, at this rate, you're going to finish in like 3 days and 17 hours or 18 hours. And I was like, no freaking way. I was like, how do you know that? And he says, well, I actually did it last year, and that was my finish time, and I can see it on my garment. I was like, holy crap, that's quite a fast time. And he was like, yeah, it is quite a fast time. And I was like, I remember saying to him, I'm really enjoying myself. I'm having such, I can't believe I'm in the Highland Trail and I'm probably going to finish tomorrow. Like, this is mad. And he was like, well, you've got a choice, Kerry. You can make life really difficult for yourself and turn yourself inside out to finish, or you can just keep doing what you're doing. And I was like, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because I'm really scared of what will happen if I change what I'm doing now. But that was somewhat taken out of my hands anyway, because as I was climbing into Glen Affric, just a freak massive stone flicked up from under my wheel and smacked me square on the foot that I'd already gone over, and it was absolutely excruciating pain. Like, I couldn't twist my foot, I couldn't lift it, I couldn't clip in. It was really awful. I didn't know what I was just sitting, just trying to like ease the pain, and eventually I was sort of like, well, what do I do? Like, do I turn back and like keep pedaling, or what do I do? And I looked at the tracker and I was like, I'm a day ahead of the next girl, so I don't really need to do very much, actually. Like, I can just keep going gently. So it's a big hiker bike into Glen Affric, and I was like, just do that. And there was loads of water bars, and it was awkward. So I lowered my seat, changed my cleat position, and just didn't take my foot out, and just sort of like did, when you get off a bike and you wish you were more skillful, but the bike's between your legs and you're kind of like trying to get it over something really awkward, and it's just not good. Like, that was Glen Affric for me. But after that part of Glen Affric, it smooths out quite a lot, and it's really nice gravel for ages and ages. And it keeps going like that all the way past Fort Augustus to Fort William, actually. But then you had the West Highland Way. Oh, my word. By this point, I was like, I am like 100% ultra cyclist right now, because last night I slept in my sleeping bag in my waterproofs because I knew if I did that, I wasn't going to get back in my sleeping bag. And I didn't know it at the time, and I was pedaling through the night, and it's the weirdest thing when you're pedaling so tired. Because up until that point, I was maybe having 3.5 hours of sleep. And this is going to sound absolutely ridiculous, but when I woke up, I was like, yes, another big day on the bike. This is amazing. I wasn't like, oh, I feel awful. I was actually genuinely like, this is brilliant. But pedaling through the night that night, it's mad, the things that go through your head. And when you're pedaling up the Devil's Staircase, oh, I don't know, oh, crumbs, right. When you're pedalling up the Devil's Staircase, I love Gaelic language and I love etymology and place names and how Gaelic brings the Highlands in particular to life. And there's a section of the Devil's Staircase that's called Macphee, and that in Gaelic means height of the deer. And I remember pedalling along being like, I wonder if I'll see any deer. How prosaic would that be? And sure enough, just as I was thinking it, this herd of deer, just as the sun was sort of starting to come up, just like ran by me, and it was just the most beautiful, it was a mad, mad feeling. And up until that point, I was in so much pain. My feet were an absolute mess. And I must have spent several hours just making like yelping noises, just sort of like trying to make anything cancel out the pain. And then I had this beautiful moment, and I just knew I'm going to finish it. Like, whatever happens, I could probably walk now to Tyndrum and get in ahead of the next woman. But one other thing did mess up my finish a little bit. I made the mistake of checking my tracker, and Niall Shannon was behind me. But the way the tracker was glitching made it look like he was right behind me. And I was so delirious that I swore I could hear him breathing down my neck. And I remember going through the tunnel after King's House at Bridge of Orchy. Like, I think I was like sprinting with my bike, like looking behind me, like Niall's right there. He was 40 minutes behind me, and I was so pissed off with him because I was like, he has ruined the finish of the Highland Trail for me. I wanted to enjoy this moment, and I'm now, like, for the first time in the event, racing to the. I was like, there's no way this dude is going to catch me. So, and it, like, Niall and I had this like hilarious bond from our experience at Highland Trail, even though we never saw each other once. It's just so beautiful. So. Yeah, just really special. Like crossing the line, a few friends have come up the road. I finished in under 4 days, which is just insane. Like sixth amongst the men, like that was really freaking cool. And I didn't get an FKT, and I'm totally fine with that because the route was 10 miles longer and it was 16 miles shorter when the FKT was set. So what I'm telling you is I'll probably do it next year now. I'm not competitive, but so I'm going to rattle through the last wee bit actually because I'm definitely waffling. But yeah, we like the winds. Bloody hell, we live in an amazing country, and even though I've seen so much of it, there's still so much I feel I want to see. I love that I passed through such a place so rich with Gaelic culture and heritage as well. Like it was a real motivation for me. Fisher Fields on the left, it's the most rural's not the right word. The most remote place, the furthest away place from a main road in the whole of the UK is Fisher Fields, and it's just fantastic. And that's the infamous river crossing in Fisher Fields. So if you get there in bad weather and it's in spate, you cannot get past. People have like tried to get past it with like water up to their necks and bikes above their heads type thing. People have had to wait 2 or 3 days to get to the other side because it's been so bad. But I had it amazing, just paddled across. It was fantastic. Fort Augustus fish and chips. You get them twice. Once on the way out and once on the way back. It's great. That was a highlight. Like Fort Augustus, it's like I'm on the Highland Trail, and then when you reach at the other end, you're like, I'm nearly finished the Highland Trail. So it was a really beautiful wee synergy. And just again, that was on the way to Allerdale Estate, and the second morning, I had really good weather, and that was like a proper pinch me moment. Just reminding myself, like, to try and remember to take some pictures if you can, even though you're in a race, because these are just beautiful, beautiful things. So yeah, that's a wee rattle through of the Highland Trail, and other things that I love doing, like just the local stuff. We have so many beautiful places on our doorsteps. And Balquidder Glen on the left. I use that for my training actually. It's a really lovely loop that you can do from Aberfoyle, and that's how I sort of got to grips with my bivvy. Would pedal up the glen and then just find a spot by the river or at the side of the road. And there's quite a big hike-a-bike up to Shean Achaha, it's called in Gaelic. It's like the knoll of the fairy battle. And then you sort of hike a bike down the other side as well. So there are like little miniature Highland Trail places that you can pick and do as your practice. I just love that picture of Glen Ample. It's so beautiful. Again, it's really close to Stirlingshire. And then another one, I had this wild idea that would be really fun to pack raft from Aberfoyle to my house near Stirling on the River Forth. I didn't realise how twisty the River Forth was. I also didn't realise that pack rafts stop dead when you're not paddling. But again, like just really, like not everything you do has to be like the Highland Trail or the TCR or the whatever. Like you can actually do some really cool stuff in your back garden at home. Yeah, so I would love to get to like Neil level of racing. Like I'd absolutely love to. And I have done one other ultra since, and I was really buzzing to see Jack, who's eating all the food, because I did the Land Between, which was in Northumbria, which is 550 kilometres, and that was really cool because it was a really good chance for me to practice pedalling through the night without any sleep at all. And Niall Shannon, who finished behind me, the ghost of Niall Shannon, who stalked me in all my final hours, also did it. And it was so beautiful bonding with Niall. I rode with him and the three guys for the first several hours. And Jack was one of the people that I rode with. I remember being like, oh my gosh, Jack is so strong. Like he just went off the front on the bike. But somebody said, yeah, but he's not so good technically. And I was like, oh, is that right? Is that right? So, and I think... sorry, that was not meant to be a burn. Sorry, Jack. It's part of the story. So Jack did actually go flying past me. I didn't realise for ages that I was in a group of 4 at the front of the event, and I let the 3 go. And I can't remember. Jack and I were riding together. You stopped to get a pint of Coke, and then you caught me again and went absolutely flying past me. You took a wrong turning, and then we both stopped at like the only shop to get food. But I'd got there just before you and just as you arrived, but the whole time I was like, Jack's going to catch me any minute now, Jack's going to catch me, but he never came. But the last part of the Land Between was really technical, so I was like, right, come on Kerry, you've got this on Jack, come on Kerry, and I managed to hold him off, which was absolutely amazing. So yeah, Jack, I enjoyed racing you, well, sort of racing you that day, it was really good fun. But it made me laugh as well when you were eating all the food, because I thought maybe he was at the co-op eating so much food that he just took ages to get going again. And that's why I didn't see him. So that's another really beautiful part of the ultra racing, is like the stories and the bonds that you form with people, even when they're invisible bonds and they don't realise that they're part of your story actually. And it's just lovely. So yeah, I can't come and talk to you about bikes and myself without bringing the Hebrides into things. I've already talked about them, but on the left in Screep, which means scrape in Gaelic, is an amazing mountain bike route on the Isle of Harris. It's called the Postman Walk because up until 1980, there was no road out of the village of Rennigadale. I think maybe during the clearances, some of the Herachs moved themselves over to Rennigadale and were like, we're not leaving the island. And I'm not speaking out of turn when I say this because they have made a programme about it, but a lot of the folk from Rennigadale are also inbred because they just didn't leave. But so the postman in Rennigadale used to pick up the mail and the medicine and walk from Rennigadale up the hill and over the other side into Tarbert, pick up the mail and then back. So he created this like zigzag path, which is now known as the Postman Walk. And he's still alive and still lives in Rennigadale actually. And it is fantastic. If you're into mountain biking, you can walk it as well. It's like one of my top 5 favourite trails in the world. It's just brilliant and so beautiful and just so full of history as well. Yeah, I love Isle of Harris whilst I come from South US just because it's a bit different, and it's just I like hop on the ferry to Ullapool and bike pack your way down. I'd go to Horickapost campsite and just base yourself there for 2 or 3 days and go and do the Isle of Harris. Yeah. Another thing that's really like important to me as well is inclusion, and I feel really strongly about paying it forward. I feel like I've been helped by a lot of invisible hands in my life, and I'm not sure if I've always appreciated who those people are that have used their invisible hands to help me. And I've got so much out of bikes, and it's given me so much, and I want other people to feel what I've felt and be part of what I've been part of. And so some of the work that I do is with Adaptive Riders Collective. I run events in Aberfoyle, and Dukes of Gander 2022 was the first ever gravel event to have an inclusive adaptive riders category, which was absolutely amazing. And since then, my very good friend Neil has set up Adaptive Riders Collective, which I'm a director of as well. And we have Dirt Divas. I've seen a couple of Dirt Divas faces in here. We run a women's festival as well, just getting more people riding bikes and gravel riding. And I'm a director with Bike Trossach's community interest company as well. So I work for them, and I work in renewables. And yeah, I just really like being around bike people, doing bike things and giving other people the opportunity. But like one of the really fun things that I've done this year, and this is where my media training absolutely failed me this year. Cycling Weekly phoned me about this park ride. And they were like, where did you get the idea for Park Ride for? And I went, oh, basically just ripped off Park Run. And that's the title that they ran with in the magazine article. I basically just ripped off Park Run, which is actually 100% true. But we've got way more trails in Aberfoyle, 10k, 20k and 30k. And I was trying to think of ways that we could bring families into riding, and I came up with this idea to just, well, what about if we run bairns on bikes and mums and dads can drop off their kids and go and ride the 10k or the 20k, or they take their kids with them. And I managed to get some funding from Stirling Council, ran a pilot in the summer, and it was flipping amazing. Julie comes along on Sundays, and it's been fantastic. So we've set it up to run the last Sunday of the month now, which was it's been like absolutely brilliant, and I've just loved seeing it. And I just love on a Sunday morning, which is this Sunday actually, just spending time with people who have maybe never ridden bikes before and never done gravel, and we've got the infrastructure there, so it's just easy to do. But the cease and desist letter hasn't arrived yet, but it does turn out that Park Ride is trademarked, and they did come after me, kind of politely, kind of not. So I'm actually thinking that I might change the name, because I'm not allowed to use Park Ride anymore, to Path Ride. And Path is Gaelic for park. It's Pairc, and the A's got an accent on it, which I think would be quite nice, because there's a lot of Gaelic in the Trossachs, and Gaelic's obviously my first language as well. So hopefully they wouldn't come after me for that. So yeah, thanks for coming to my talk.
Any questions for Kerry? I don't know if we can reach out far. Kim, you might have to come.
I probably shouldn't ask this, but can you take 3 hours off your HT 550 time?
Well, so I think the 10 miles extra that was on this year will be taken away. So that's like an hour and a half probably, going off of 7.2 kilometres an hour. I maybe wouldn't wreck my foot so much that, like, I think that was probably 2 or 3 hours. And then I was quite casual this year. Like when I saw you, I was quite, yeah, I was, honestly, I was determined to enjoy it. So I just like sat and had a coffee and chilled, and that's important, because you do need that little bit of like downtime. But 10 minutes every time you stop for a coffee is quite a lot of time. And maybe just be a little bit more intentional. And I didn't sleep on the first night anyway, because I was so buzzed. So do I need to sleep on the first night? I don't know. And I'm not saying that I think I will get the FKT, but for me it's quite fun to test what that might look like. And if I don't get it, that's also cool, because I'll learn a lot and probably have good stories. So yeah.
Anyone else?
Actually, so see, growing up on South US, and you said it's windy, right? So do you think like living in those conditions, running after sheep in all of those conditions, like prepared you for this ultra racing where you have, Scotland throws anything at you?
I think the fact that I spent so much of my childhood outside and playing and just moving probably set me up quite well. And I remember somebody telling me this story once, and it was about it was a sports psychology story about a guy who was a 400-metre hurdler or a 100-metre hurdler, And he thought he was naturally talented, so he just didn't train, but he wasn't going to progress. They were really worried about him. He was on a national programme, but he had an arrogance where he was like, I don't need to train, like, I'm just naturally good. I'm naturally fast. And they were like, no, that's not possible. So they started diving into his background, and they were like, well, you know, what did you do when you were younger? Like, were you in an athletics club? And he was like, nah, I could just, you know, run with the school. And they were like, well, did you practice hurdles or did you do high jump? And he was like, no, I did none of that. And they were like, well, what did you do with your friends? And he was like, oh, I'd just go out and play. I'd play football. I'd play like chap and run or something like that. And they were like, well, what's that? And he was like, oh, I lived in the street and there was like loads of walls. And then we'd like knock on the door and then just like jump over all the walls to get away. And they were like, oh, right. So you were like hurdling when you were a kid. Is that what you're saying? But you still think it's a natural talent that you've got. So I think a lot of what you do when you are young does set you up, actually, if you choose to pursue it in that way. And probably. Yeah.
So see, for the next year, apart from the Highland Trail 550, what are your other plans? Maybe Atlas Mountain Race?
I would love to do the Atlas Mountain Race. I would love to do it 1 year. Yes. But I don't know how. Like, that for me feels like another big step, actually, like financially and like logistically and stuff. Like, what I really want as well, I want to go and duke it out with girls. And I was shocked to be a day ahead at the Highland Trail. Like, I really thought, like, the Quindas and the Jennies, like really experienced women, I thought I was going to be like duking it out with them. And it's the same as well when I did the Land Between. And I'm not because I want to compete against them or because I think I'm better than them. No, because I want to learn from them and I want to be pushed and I want to be in and amongst that. So, and I think for me to do that, I would need to go and do races like the Atlas and stuff. So yeah, although we were talking about, what's the race called? Mother North is a cool one in Norway that's come onto my radar that I think I'd quite like to do. Yeah.
Any more suggestions for other races for Kerry to have a crack on? I think she deserves an applause. Yeah.